Welcome back to the Bears Baseball Network. Today we are doing the Shortstop preview. I'll let Robbie take it away now.
Boom. All right. So we've got our shortstop preview, obviously following our position previews. The last infield position, arguably the best infield position. And, talking about shortstop, I kind of want to get your guys' perspective on this. But especially from my perspective, I would say this is one of the few positions on the field that I will put a guy for his defense. I'm a very offensive-minded coach, especially second base, third base, corner outfield. I'm putting a guy who can hit over a guy who can field. But shortstop's one of those positions, man, that I will put a good glove. KJ, what are your thoughts on that? Will you put a good glove at shortstop even if a guy can't necessarily hit great?
Yeah, I think, shortstop's one of those positions, at second base, if you can hit, you're going to play there even if your glove's not very good. At shortstop, if you can hit and your glove's not very good, I think typically you're still going to play, but you're not going to play at shortstop most likely.
Yeah, you'll get moved to a different position. I 100% agree. And that's my perspective on it as well. So a lot of these guys, a lot of different types of players on today's show. We've got some guys who are more glove first. We got some guys who can kind of do it all. And then we got some guys who maybe are a little more bat first. And then their glove is good enough to play short. But let's go ahead. We're going to start with going through every age, every varsity team, and talking about their shortstop situation. Starting with 18U, one of the more obvious situations, I would feel like a lot of these shortstop situations are pretty obvious. Shortstop typically one of the better players on the team, and it's Lucas Levy at 18U. And Bernie, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is a guy, Bernie, our summer MVP last year. I would say definitely one of the most consistent hitters on that 18U team, especially last year. Give me your thoughts on Lucas Levy and if you think he could really give us that kind of performance again.
Well, yeah, I think Lucas Levy can obviously repeat his performance from last season. He's a good glove in the field. He's a good mix of power and contact at the plate. He does both very well. So, yeah, Lucas Levy's going to have another great season here probably.
Yeah, and Bernie, my perspective with Lucas is just the big thing about him is he hit for a lot more power last year than I initially thought he was going to. I said before on a previous BBN that Lucas really proved me wrong. I didn't think he'd hit for that much power. I didn't think he'd carry over what he did in 2020, 2021 into that 2021-2022 fall to summer split. I didn't think he'd carry it over, but he definitely did, definitely proved me wrong, and I think he could really have another go at that MVP award going into this summer. Moving into 16U, the old 16U Burnsville squad. Again, pretty obvious situation. Alex Hobson is the guy there. Bernie, I would say at least arguably, Alex Hobson has been the best player on that Burnsville squad. A guy that I know you like a lot. Give me your thoughts on Alex Hobson at the shortstop position for that Burnsville squad.
Yeah, Hobbs was great last season. Actually, last season he started as the 10 hitter on the squad. He was bottom line type of guy, and then his bat really came alive. He was my leadoff hitter for the majority of the season, and he was a bat first type of shortstop until the fall started, and then his glove really came along last fall, and he turned into a really good all-around player.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think if he could take a little bit more of a step forward with his bat, you could see him climb into maybe the top 25 hitters in the entire Bears organization. But a guy definitely, I think, has improved a lot as a defender and a guy who's really taken a leadership role in that 16U Burnsville squad and a guy I'm excited for this year. Moving on to 15U, KJ, going to throw this one to you. This is a guy, one of the best players in the Bears. I know he was our fall Cy Young. Did he win Summer MVP as well? No, Vince won Summer MVP. He was definitely in the mix, though, for that Summer MVP and even the Fall MVP. One of the best players in the Bears, it's Tegan Kreitler for that 15U Burnsville squad, or 15U Dalton squad, excuse me. KJ, give me your thoughts on Tegan, man. Obviously, one of the best players in the Bears. What more is there to say about Tegan?
Yeah, Tegan is just a guy who does everything right. He's a top pitcher. His glove is, almost second to none at shortstop. And, the last thing you mentioned is his bat, which is just, enormous. He's probably one of the top hitters on one of the top teams. So, not much to say about Tegan Kreitler. I watched him in BWL, and these pitchers, are just scared to pitch to him. He takes a lot of walks. He hasn't put up, huge numbers in the BWL because these pitchers, man, they're not throwing him fastballs. They're walking him. He's taking a lot of walks. So, these teams that don't know about Tegan Kreitler here come the season are going to find out real quick.
Yeah, especially when Tegan, bats on top of that order. Bernie, correct me if I'm wrong. Is he mostly in the 2 spot last year for that team?
Yeah, I think so.
So Teagan sitting in the 2 spot, and for a pitcher on another team that doesn't know Teagan, you look on deck, you got Vince Dalton and Jack Roberts, who are both big, strong guys, and you think, okay, this guy Teagan, maybe I can pitch to him. And that's where I think Teagan's really going to punish people. Because like you said, KJ, he's not one of those hitters who's really going to extend their zone to make contact, and he has taken a lot of walks in the BWL against pitchers who know him. So I think when he gets to play against those other teams, and he's more of a stranger to them, that's when we can see him really explode with the bat. I would say after April into maybe the first couple weeks of May, those first 6 weeks of the season or so, Teagan started a little bit slow. I remember we had that one episode, Bernie, where we talked about the errors he was making, and he really struggled to start the season. After that, after the first 6 weeks, I think there's definitely an argument to be made. He was the best player in the Bears the rest of the season. Just an absolute superstar. I've been really impressed with his glove in the BWL. He's played an unbelievable shortstop, and I think he could definitely be right in the mix for that MVP conversation at the high school age in the summer. Moving on to 14U, this team, a little shortstop competition. Really, if you think about, if I'm thinking ahead, of all the ages, this is probably the only age that has a competition, a legitimate competition for shortstop, and it's Andrew Driscoll versus Jack Dalton. We touch on this combo a little bit in the second base preview because whichever one of them doesn't play short is probably going to play second. But two players here who I would say are very different stylistically. And KJ, I want to start with you with Andrew Driscoll, a guy who's, I would say, a glove-first shortstop for sure. One of the best gloves in the Bears, in my opinion. And I think his bat's a little underrated. Give me your thoughts on Andrew Driscoll.
Yeah, I've had Andrew kind of all around the infield here in the BWL this season, and he's been really, really good wherever I put him. Obviously he's a really good shortstop. He's played a very good third base. I've had him play a little bit second base. He's pitched good when he gets opportunities, and his bat, is underrated, like you said. He definitely holds his own at the plate, takes really good at bats. So he's going to be an exciting player come this season.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a player who could make some waves going into the season. And Bernie, I want to throw this over to you for Jack Dalton. We kind of talked about this at second base, a guy who was basically a full-time 50U player last year, is repeating the same age again because he's been playing up his whole career, with his older brother Vince, finally getting to play his own age, be his own star. I know we touched a little bit this on the second base preview, but give me your thoughts on Jack Dalton playing 14U full-time.
Yeah, I know I touched on this a lot, like when the move first happened. I know KJ talked about it a little bit in the second base preview, but I think Jack Dalton can elevate himself into a top, definitely at least a top 10 hitter in the Bears, playing at his own age. I think he has that much potential in him. So, yeah, I think Jack's going to have a monster year.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think whoever wins that shortstop job is going to do a fantastic job. And obviously the other one will move over probably to second base. And that'll be a monster middle infield. It'll be exciting to kind of look at the middle infields in the entire Bears and see where that one is going to rank, because I think it'll be a very, very exciting middle infield. Moving into 13U, again, Landon Meyer, he's the guy there. And, touching on Landon Meyer, I think he's arguably, if you are considering age appropriate, right, comparing 13U player to 13U, 17U to 17U, right, not going across age, I think he's the best defensive infielder in the Bears. If there was one critique on Landon Meyer going into maybe last spring, like last April when he first made that move to shortstop, I would say the one critique was he was kind of a high floor, low ceiling shortstop where he was making every easy play. Literally didn't make any errors, but he wasn't necessarily going making the big plays, right? He wasn't making that diving play up the middle. He wasn't creating a whole bunch of outs, but he was super reliable making every play. And over the course of the season, it just seemed like, okay, he made one big play this weekend. Oh, now he made two big plays this weekend. All of a sudden, he's making a big play every game. All of a sudden, he's making two big plays every game. Just kept down the line. He kept getting better and better and better. And I would say in the BWL, that's kind of came to life as well, where he's been that shortstop who makes all the easy plays, but is also getting outs that the team shouldn't get. Making that diving play up the middle, that backhand play, and then getting the force out at third. Just making plays on the infield. And I think that's been the big difference maker for him to really step into that elite tier of shortstop that I think he is. But KJ, I want to throw this to you. I kind of talked about his glove, and I want you to give some perspective on his bat. Another guy that you've had to pitch against in the BWL, and in my opinion, one of the best hitters in the Bears. But give me your perspective on Landon Meyer's bat.
Yeah, Landon's a lot. The same approach these pitchers take against Landon is kind of the same as they take against Teagan. He's not getting a lot of strikes. He's taking a lot of walks. Landon's a little more aggressive than Teagan, but he's good enough where he can hit a pitch that's not necessarily his pitch and poke it for a double, home run, or whatever. So he's a very dangerous hitter. I always joke with him that he's probably not going to see a fastball all week. So I always joke around with him about that, but it's true. You know, this guy's not getting fastballs because he's that dangerous of a hitter.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference I was going to make between Landon and Teagan. I would say the big difference between Landon and Teagan is Teagan won't extend his zone for any pitch. Where Landon, I think, will extend his zone for fastballs, but will not swing it off speed, especially outside of the zone. So when Landon's getting all this off speed, he is taking his walks. You know, he's not going to extend his zone on off speed pitches, but I do think he's a little more aggressive on those fastballs outside the zone, and that's kind of the difference there. Either way, Landon, again, kind of like Teagan, he's going to be hitting leadoff for this 13U Floyd squad. And when you look down the line of hitters in that 13U Floyd lineup, you got to pitch to somebody, and I think a lot of teams typically don't see a big power threat at leadoff. So when they see Landon Meyer up there, I think he is going to get a lot of fastballs because you don't want to put him on to start games. Moving on to 12U KJ, ZZ Garcia. You know, it's crazy to think last year when we did, we didn't do a shortstop preview necessarily, but when we were talking about 12U last year, ZZ Garcia was a guy who was on the second team hoping to make a bench spot for the top team this time last year, and now it's like he's going in the season as the starting shortstop. It's his job. Tell me about ZZ and that kind of transition for him.
Yeah, ZZ's one of those guys, man. It's pretty much, no doubt he's going to be the starting shortstop. I'm going to touch on him a lot later, but, basically everyone knows the name of ZZ Garcia. He's one of the, we talk about, we want a glove first, a bat second, almost a shortstop. This guy is both. He's a big bat. He can pitch. He's a really good glove at shortstop, especially at a 12U age. It's very helpful to have a good glove at shortstop. So, I'm going to touch on it a lot more later, but, I'm very excited for how ZZ's going to compete this year.
With ZZ and, KJ, you may have a different perspective, but at least from my perspective, ZZ to me feels like almost the opposite of Landon Meyer last April, where ZZ will make these big plays, these plays that nobody else on the field could make, and then he'll miss a routine ball. And it doesn't happen often. He's not making a ton of errors, but it seems like the balls he missed are typically the routine ones, and then he'll go out and make an unbelievable play that nobody else on the field can make. So I think if ZZ can just clean up those routine ones and make those easy ground balls 100% plays, then you'll see ZZ really become that elite tier shortstop with Teagan and with Landon. But he's definitely on the path there. It's crazy how much he's grown in the past year. Moving into 11U, Bernie, once again, I think a pretty clear favorite going into the season as a shortstop, being Owen Lewis. He's another one of those guys, Bernie, who's just 100% basically on routine plays. I mean, he really doesn't make errors on the easy balls. And his bat, I would say, doesn't quite hit for as much power as you'd like, but in terms of contact, he never strikes out, and he's going to hit. I would say I could almost guarantee he's going to hit at least 500 going into the season. But give me your thoughts on Owen Lewis.
Yeah, man. Owen's one of those guys that he does everything right. He's gonna give you a good at bat almost every at bat. I know you have the stats on it, but I think his strikeout rate was like 4% or maybe even less than that, something crazy low. He's gonna make nearly every single play in the field, and over the course of winter, especially, I've seen him make some diving plays out there. So I think you made comparisons. I'll make the comparison at least to Landon Meyer defensively, how he could, I think, go into that kind of bigger defensive role this year. I think Owen Lewis is a great player.
Yeah, definitely a fundamental player on that team, and a guy I'm going to be really excited to see where he can go after a big winner this year. All right, let's move into our sleepers and breakouts. Once again, a sleeper is a player who is a little undervalued, a little underrated, a guy who's going to perform better than maybe the public perception. A breakout is a guy who's going to go from one tier and jump into the next, or maybe two tiers up. And for me, the tiers are superstar, star, starter, role player, and prospect. So a player who's a prospect, if he becomes a starter, that could be a breakout. Or a starter who becomes a superstar, that could be a breakout. Let's go ahead and start with our sleepers. Bernie, I want to throw this one to you. You just talked about him, so maybe continue your point. Give me your sleeper at shortstop.
Yeah, I'll stick with my shortstop at 11U, Owen Lewis. I think this guy is seriously a dark horse candidate for the Gold Glove Award at shortstop. He's that good defensively. And I think his power, will develop a little bit this year. He's probably right at the top of the order at 11U Burnsville squad. And I think he's going to be a big contributor this year to that squad.
Yeah, and I would say with this team, obviously they were a youth prep team last summer and then moved into the Bears full varsity squad in the fall. And I think a lot of these Burnsville players are definitely going to be sleeper candidates to the general population of the Bears just because they're still young. They're still rookies. They still haven't got a whole ton of tournament experience. I think Owen Lewis is going to be a name like Harrison Blabaum that people know at the end of the summer because he's just going to have another monster season. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. KJ, give me your sleeper at the shortstop position.
Yeah, I'm going to go to 13U. I'm going to go Mason Geddes. I haven't seen much of Mason Geddes' defense, but, I have seen his offense, and he's going to be a pretty good hitter. I've seen him in free swing. He works hard. He's in circuit with me. So, I don't know much about Mason, but I know he works hard. I know he's going to play a key role on that Bell team. So, I'm excited for him.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys that's kind of in between. He'll either be on the bottom half of the Floyd roster or the top half of the Bell roster. If he is on that Bell squad, he's the no doubt starting shortstop. He'll hit in the top of the order. And he's a guy who, when he came to the Bears, was an outfielder, and then his glove was so stinking good, we had to move him into the infield. I mean, that's how good his glove was. I think you'd like to see him hit for a little bit more power. That would be the big thing with him, because he's a big, strong kid. You'd think he hit for a lot more power than he does. If he could up his power numbers even a little bit, I think you're talking about a guy who could be a real contributor on that Floyd team maybe come next fall. A guy who could really jump into that team. I think that's a great pick, KJ. For me, my sleeper, I'm going to go ahead and go with a guy that we talked about on BBN a lot, a guy I like a lot in Jaden Coleman. This is a guy that I think is just going to go up there and really grind out at bats. Obviously he's one of those glove-first shortstops we talk about, and like I say all the time, he's slick with it. He's one of the best defenders in the Bears, I think. But his bat, I think he's going to take a real step forward this year. I've been happy with some of his swings in the cage. The ball's coming off his bat a lot harder than you'd think it would if you look at his size. And I think he could hit for a little bit more power than maybe necessarily people think he will. And I think he's going to be a guy who gets on base a lot, who's going to, I would say, I would like him to hit over 400. I think that'd be a really good spot for him. If he's hitting over 400 and playing elite level defense, this is a guy that I think is going to burst his way onto that top team some point next year, and I'm going to be really excited about. Real quick, Bernie, before we go to breakouts, I want to talk about a prospect or two. Give me a prospect, Bernie. Anybody not on a varsity team right now that you want to talk about? Shortstop.
Yeah, I'll go to 13U and I'll take Dylan Graham. This is someone I always see a lot, helping out with 13 practice, being around on Thursday nights. And, this guy just has a big power bat. He's definitely more of a, I think, bat-first shortstop. But the glove has gotten better as well, but I think you can see Dylan have a monster offensive season this year.
Yeah, a guy I liked a lot ever since he joined, and a guy who I think really worked hard this winter. I've always wanted to see Dylan really dive into baseball and really dive into wanting to be a top player. And I think this winter he really took that step in dedication, and I'm excited what that's going to do for him on the field. Another 13U shortstop prospect I want to talk about is a guy who's very brand new to the Bears. I think joined maybe a month ago, very brand new to the Bears, and his name is Maxim Borodko. I don't know if he'll necessarily end up at shortstop long term, but right now I've been putting him at shortstop in practice, and he looks pretty good over there. You look at his size and you could think maybe he's more of a corner infielder than a shortstop, but he's actually got a pretty good glove and a very accurate arm, and a guy who I think is going to hit for power. And you don't necessarily always see power hitting shortstops. If his glove can be good enough and he can have enough range to stay at shortstop, his bat is going to make him one of the best hitting shortstops at the level he plays. And I'm excited. If he really works hard, I could see Maxim Borodko being a name that starts appearing on these prospect lists going down the road. But a very new player. Just wanted to give him a little shout out because he's been impressive at practice. All right, let's move into our breakouts. KJ, going to start with you here. Give me your breakout at the shortstop position.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to ZZ Garcia. I think you can argue, almost he's already in the superstar, but I think he's gonna take a big step forward from last year. I think last year he was your typical leadoff hitter, other than he didn't walk much, but he never struck out. He had a lot of singles, stole a lot of bases. I think he's still my bad leadoff this year, but I think his whole hitting has changed. I think he's gonna hit for a lot more power. I think he's gonna hit a lot more extra base hits. I think the pitchers are going to pitch him a little differently, so probably will take more walks. And then you go to his defense. I touched on his defense a little bit earlier, man, but he's a very, very good glove. His arm strength, I haven't really seen a shortstop at that age have as good as arm strength as he does. He could also find some innings this year on the mound, so we're excited to see him pitch a little bit when he gets in there. I think the thing you don't talk about with ZZ much, other than stat-wise, is, he's a great teammate. The guys look up to him. And he works as hard as he did, when he was on. We touched how he was started on that bottom team last year. He still works as hard as he did then now. So, he still works hard like he's on the bottom team. At the same time, he's very confident. So I'm really excited for what Zizi's going to do. And also, it's Zizi's birthday today, so I want to say happy birthday to Zizi, although he didn't invite me to his party. But yeah, we're really excited what Zizi's going to do this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday, ZZ. And, KJ, you made a couple really good points I kind of want to touch on. That's kind of always the second step for us as coaches is when we have this guy who's a prospect on the bottom teams and he's working really hard, when he finally gets to the top team, is he still going to work that hard? That's kind of that second check mark for those prospects, and ZZ has definitely crossed that path where he is still working hard. Arguably the hardest worker at that age, definitely, even though he's one of the best players at the age. And KJ, I don't think it's wrong at all to call him a breakout. I think you could make the argument he's a superstar, but I think right now, as we sit here, it's hard to say ZZ is as established as Lucas Levy, Landon Meyer, Tegan Kreitler. But I think this year could be his proving ground to get into that conversation where he's just an elite level shortstop. So I think it's a great pick. All right, going into Bernie, give me your breakout at the shortstop position.
My breakout's my 16U shortstop, Alex Hobson. I think Hobbs last year put himself on the map. But I don't think he's not Lucas Levy, Tegan Kreitler-esque yet. He's still a tier below. I think I'd consider him like a star right now. I think he puts himself in that superstar category this year, has a monster offensive season. And, the glove last fall really came along. I know he was in the Gold Glove discussion in the fall. I think you could see him possibly win one this summer. Yeah,
absolutely. Hobbs, we touched on him earlier. A guy I like a lot. I think he takes the best at-bats on that 16-year Burnsville squad. Even if, the raw power isn't necessarily the best on the team, the raw contact may not be the best on the team, but in terms of his approach and his at-bats, allows him to hit for more power and hit for more contact than maybe those pure contact guys and pure power guys on his team. I think he is the best hitter on that squad, and I could see him having a huge year where he gets into maybe the outside of that MVP conversation with these other big shortstops. All right, going into my breakout, this is a guy who was a breakout at second base for KJ. He's going to be a breakout at shortstop for me. It is Jack Dalton. This is a guy who, honestly, I couldn't resist talking about him because I think he could be a top 5, top 3 player in the Bears this year. That's how high I am on Jack Dalton. I think it's hard to argue that he was a superstar last year on that 15U Dalton squad. Just with the guys on his team, Vince, Tegan, Jack Roberts had a monster year, Ty, all these guys around him, Jack didn't really stand out. Even though he was one of the best players, he didn't necessarily stand out. Moving down to 14U, I think this is his chance to really stand out on that team. I think he could be an MVP candidate. I think he could be the best player on that team. And we're talking about a team with Ben Combs, Andrew Willeret, and Landon Nickerson, and I still think Jack could be the best player on the team. A guy who I think is just going to absolutely explode this year, and I'm excited to see what he could do as a potential breakout. That's going to do it for our shortstop preview. Next week, we've got our outfield preview, part 1, taking a look at the corner outfielders in the Bears. I'm very excited to look at that one because a lot of fun names in that conversation. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network, and we'll talk to y'all next week.